Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to The What Life. So I thought I would dive back into the Glasgow Crit reverse circuit for the ZRacing monthly event. But before we dive into that, a little bit of housekeeping. I've thrown a few things on eBay. I've got some HJC helmets. I got some kits, some yada, yada, yada. I'm going to be updating it across the course of the next week or so. I'm trying to get rid of a load of stuff. It's stuff that I've been kind of given by brands to go and do photo shoots with and use. So things like the HJC helmets had a couple of uses, and then that's literally it. And they're going on eBay. So I'll put the link in the bio. So if you are in the need of kit, now that summer's coming along, just go and check it out. Second thing is, guys, I dropped a little video up yesterday where I cut down Paris's steerer tube. I do appreciate anyone diving over and having a look and just kind of supporting the channel, if you will. Anyway, we're racing. Cat B, Glasgow Crit. It's the reverse circuit. Obviously, they haven't fixed the sprint jersey bug, so everyone gets sprint jersey. Crit racing, I really, really, really enjoy it because it feels a little bit lawless. Like there's certainly like less. I did a scratch race for the ZRL on Tuesday this week, and it was very like measured and like, okay, we're going to go easy for this bit. We'll push that little hill. We'll go easy for this bit. This crit racing is just absolutely lawless, and that's what I love about it, and especially the Glasgow UCI circuit, which, facts for you guys, it's 18k or 17.8 kilometers, which is 11.5 miles with 198 or as good as 200 meters of vert in it. That vert comes from the kicker that we're going up now, and then the other kicker that a couple of kickers basically. These little kickers, you get the Clyde kicker, which is reversed, but it's it's just like, it's really, really kind of pseudo-aggressive. Anything can happen. Like people can just suddenly decide to like kick on, and that's kind of this is exactly the way this race goes. When I first moved into Cat B from Cat C, I remember doing a race, and I said, look, I would very rarely, I don't really want to do too many Cat B races where there's more than 20 or 30 riders. So if you are new to Cat B, try and find the Cat B races with less than kind of like 40 riders, and they are slightly different vibe to them. They're a lot of fun, and they're a little bit easier than the 150 person races that happen at prime time. And that's exactly why I love this race so much. Slightly smaller group, still really good numbers, but slightly smaller. So we ended up with about 25 people in our front group, which was about perfect, because it meant that any kind of move, you had to kind of be aware of moves. If the group is too big, someone makes a move, there's too many people, so when it strings out, it kind of strings back together. You can't break the elastic. 25 people, that elastic is a little bit more kind of fragile, and you have to kind of be on it a little bit. And if the front moves or the front goes, then you've kind of got to move with it. And I think I watched Eric do this race earlier this week, and I think he had like 13 people in his race. And that's exactly when things start becoming really dynamic, because if 2 or 3 riders go, they can leave the other 8 behind, which I think's like just makes it more interesting. And that's why I loved this particular race, racing in Cat B. And it has also been quite nice to see that I've come from like fearing doing a race with more than like 20 riders in to actually kind of being like, oh sweet, 50, we're gonna have a wicked tear up. And it kind of, I feel like I belong now, even though I'm still not quite where I want to be, but we are kind of heading in that direction. So the tactics on this one were pretty simple. You get 2 power-ups per loop. Those power-ups are only really relevant or useful whenever you get over, or when you come to the kicker, the first set of kickers, which is a double, and then as you come over the start-finish line. And that's basically it. And then you repeat it 6 times. You've got 6 times of just bowling around this course, making sure that people don't like kick off the front too much, and just trying to like hold the wheels. And I'm not quite, if this had been a flatter race, a slightly flatter race, I think I would have been a bit more comfortable trying to like put a dig in and trying to like be part of a breakaway, be part of a separation or a selection. But I didn't think that this was like, even though I felt comfortable pushing up the hills, because you do it 6 times, you get a vibe for how many watts you're going to need to put down the hill on both of these kickers. And I kind of got this feeling, I was like, okay, right, well, I don't really need to go over 600 watts on these kickers, but I need to be able to sustain that each time, every time. So you're doing 2 kickers a loop, you're doing 6 loops, so you got 12 times where you're basically having to hit your 600 watts or just under, and I put like 600 as my ceiling, and repeat that, and then be ready for any moves that happen on the back side of the course. And the back side of the course is obviously where the start finish is, which is a flatter side. So everything within our race was bowling along pretty smoothly. I will have to say, there was nothing kind of too dramatic happening. And we'd whittled the front group down certainly to about, I want to say 23 riders up front. But I did get a feeling coming into lap 3 that, something was going to happen at some stage. And you kind of see every time we go up these little kickers, there's always a little break. And I was in general trying to use my power up on the second of the 2 kickers. This time I was like, do you know what? Most people are dropping it on the first one. The first one is slightly longer. I'm going to save it for that one. But it's certainly at this stage, you kind of think, well, anything can happen. We have the potential. You see, we get a little bit of separation between the front 17 or so riders and maybe 2 or 3 off the back. So we are starting to kind of break the group, or I don't want to say break the group up, but we're making it harder for a few of the riders off the back. And every time we kind of get the chance to ride off, and leave 2 riders who might be struggling a little bit, that's going to whittle down the eventual sprint group, which obviously increases your chance of a better position at the end of the day. So how's my training going? How's it all kind of tying in? I definitely feel like my kind of 30 second, 60 second, maybe 2 minute power is definitely building. On an event like this, it's probably too much for me to hold and push and actually get the numbers, PB numbers, because I'm trying to repeat the same thing multiple times. But I think I'm kind of building, and hopefully by the end of the summer, or certainly midsummer, I'll kind of be in a position where I can, I'm just I'm happy with my numbers, where if I decide that I want to try and, do a new FTP test, I reckon I could improve on what my previous numbers have been. So I feel like I'm moving in that direction. This circles all the way back round to a video I made where I spoke to an Olympic marathon runner, Steve Scullion. He's run 2:07, 2:08. And he says that if you are not improving, week on week or every other week, if there's not something within your training that is improving, then you are probably doing something wrong. And that's very important. So that's something for you guys to think about when, I know a lot of people love racing. I know a lot of people kind of, you probably get a little bit carried away like me and try and do maybe too much racing or too much training. And then suddenly you realize that you're not actually making small improvements. And if I was to look at my numbers from this race, nothing is ever near a PR or a PB or anything like that. But I do feel strong on the bike, it feels good. But there's always going to have to be a case within a 2-week period where if you can kind of sit down with yourself and say, actually, I'm not making improvements, or it doesn't feel like I'm on the cusp of an improvement, then you probably want to have a little look back and just assess at what you're doing with your training, how you're doing it. That's if you care. I also think, some people probably don't care, and quite rightly so. This is an interesting point in the race because I think some guys decide to get a little bit, not carried away, but I think they just kind of attack it. And I had a feeling that this was kind of going to happen, so I kind of went with it a little bit and just tried to hold a few wheels, just to move through and see whether, I could stick with the race and see what was going on. My big fear was that, 5 or 6 riders would ride off the front of our, 17-person group. And then obviously you're fighting for a position outside the top 6 before you've even kind of got into the sprint. But that move doesn't stick, and we end up coming back together. Now, the fun thing about this particular race is that our last lap is absolutely nuts, and I loved it. So let me throw some numbers at you. We did this in 26 minutes, which I can't remember what I did on Monday night, but I don't know. I'm not even going to check. I held 3.8 watts per kg. My heart rate, my max heart rate is only 165, which is very low for me. I just, these little power punches doesn't really give you a chance for your heart rate to get as high as you kind of might want it to be. These little kickers up these little efforts, they're so short, 20 seconds, that your heart rate has that lag. So you put the power down, 2-3 seconds later, your heart rate starts to climb, and then your heart rate will stay a little bit higher for a little bit longer when you start calming down a bit. But it didn't really give me a chance to, really kind of max out the HR. Guys, as mentioned, I'm 41 years old, probably have a heart rate max of about 175. So to only hit 165, I probably means I didn't go early enough, or I probably could have gone earlier on the sprint. But at the same time, I was just a bit bullsed, so I'm happy with it. So I hold 3.8 watts per kg for the race, 26 minutes, 287 watts, normalized to over 310. 310 watts would be 4 watts per kg for me, so normalized at 4 watts per kg. My actual wattage was 3.8. Nothing too exciting. My 15 second was 8.1 watts, which is okay. Like, again, if I come into a sprint and I'm going too hard, I just can't hit the big numbers. I've been outside on the bike and like attacked a hill or something like that, and when I do that, I can hit like 1,000 watts, 1,100 watts, and sometimes 1,200 watts. So if I'm, if you come in, and obviously I know the situation, guys, that's not how racing works. But if I come into a sprint like fresh and just like roll into it and push, we're talking over 1,000 watts, which I'm pretty happy with. Like, I'm not like a professional cyclist by any means, so I'm always happy if I can get to those types of numbers. But doing it from a race perspective, or kind of like coming in when you are fatigued, it's so much harder to hit those types of wattages. And that's when, like, guys, it's so mental that people who have that ability to ride a race super hard and then kind of put those numbers down is just like, guys, it's impressive. Our last lap, guys, on this race was absolute carnage. This is what I was talking about earlier. Is, people just like, anything can happen in a crit race. A few guys hair off the front. Check out the mini map top right. Like, it's just like it's torn up. The rule book has gone out the window. We're not in a group anymore. We still got a whole lap to go, guys. A lap takes about 4 minutes, or this actual lap was my second fastest time ever around this course. And people are just like going for it. Some people are going for it. Some people are covering moves. I kind of knew that I was going to have to like bring the group back on this hill. You see a bit of a separation on the mini map. We drop a few riders off. Like, some guys are off the front. I'm like, well, we're going to have to try and catch them. So we dig in, or I certainly put a dig in on this first hill, carry the speed through, trying to hold that little group. So my goal isn't to try and catch the 1 or the 2 riders out the very front. My goal is just to try and hold the group, see if we can bring them back together. Work as a group to bring them back, and it kind of looks like we are doing that. So I don't worry about trying to rush to the front and put big digs in. I'm not panicking. I'm also not panicking because I don't have the legs to panic. If I panicked, I wouldn't be able to do anything anyway. Second time up last kicker, second of the kickers. Again, this one was going to take a real dig. I actually put my head down, and I kind of thought I would do a little bit better on this than I did, but still managed to just stay with the group was the plan. If they ride away from me now, like, I don't have a shot. The only problem is, guys, is that my legs are now absolutely screaming at me. Like, I'm in that kind of like, oh my god, why do my legs hurt so much? We have a sprint coming up. I need my legs to work before we even get into the sprint. And this is a blind sprint. It's 2 corners. It's a completely blind sprint. So in theory, you're working off of the distance marker on the top of the screen. I left my sprint too late. I usually like to go like 300 meters out, but I leave it too late. I think it's the blind sprint. I don't think it helps because you don't see the finish line until you're like 50 meters away. So I leave it too late. Some other guys do not leave it too late. These guys just time it way better than I do. But we have a group of 15, 17 people all lined up for the sprint. I got my feather, which, you just make do with what you have. We start getting closer. Someone goes. As soon as you start seeing power-ups, guys, like, that's your sign that, the group is going to go. I leave it a little bit late, so I get caught out. I don't think it would have changed too much, but I do try and like close my eyes, head down, sprint, fire socks, drop the power up. Probably dropped the power up way too late. Look, cross the line, I still got half of it left. But there